Yeah, like it's probably just over a year ago now. He just like DM'd us being like, "Hey, I really like you guys' music," and we were just like, "Hey, who are you?" But I mean that just in the sense of like Instagram's like,
Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. I thank you both so much for doing this.
No worries.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Paige, can you hear, or are you good? I don't think she can hear us. It's all good. She was having some technical difficulties on her end. Rad, awesome. Well, I'm Adam, and I appreciate the both of you doing this. This podcast is about the two of you and your journey in music, and we'll obviously talk about the new EP that just came out and everything else.
Sweet. Sounds good, dude.
Cool. So brothers, I read.
Correct.
All right. So talk to me about, where were you guys born and raised?
Born and raised in Auckland, New Zealand, which is that small little country next to Australia, if your geography isn't as good as some other people's is.
I knew that. I'm not very good at geography, but I could figure that part out.
Yeah. Neither am I. If you ask me anything in like a different state of America, I'll be like, LA and New York and the other ones.
Sure. Well, it's like how all of us here in the United States are just like, or at least me, for example, I'm just so confused when it gets outside of just basically Canada and Mexico and maybe Australia and New Zealand.
Well, impressive that you knew where New Zealand was then. I'm impressed.
Oh, thank you. Cool, man. Well, so who's older? Who's older? I'll tell you.
I am the elder. I'm the elder.
I'm the younger brother.
And did you look up to your brother growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've just been copying him my whole life.
Yeah, give me that. Give me that. Go on, man.
Just lead the way and I follow.
Right on. Well, what was it like growing up in New Zealand? Tell me about that a little bit.
It was great. I wouldn't really change a thing about it. We grew up in a nice neighborhood, and we went to cool schools and made some cool friends. And like living in New Zealand, it really thrives in the summertime. We've got beaches in every which direction you can point. Yeah, very kind folk in New Zealand. I don't know. It's definitely a good place to grow up. I would recommend it to anyone.
And they have a really cool, like, they really embrace the arts there, correct?
Yeah.
Like, as far as like they have, I know like Canada does it as well, where you can get a lot of like funding for records and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, they are really supportive with grants, and we've been lucky enough to get like a few like grants to just help us make a music video or just like pay for some of the recording process, which is really helpful because New Zealand is like such a small population that it's very hard to like, get anything going sustainably. So they help a lot governmentally with that. So that's a really cool initiative that they have over here.
Yeah, I know, like who else? Naked and Famous are from there, and Lord, obviously, right. But like, yeah, when I interviewed Naked and Famous, they're the ones that told me about that, because I've interviewed a lot of artists from Canada, and they were always telling me, oh yeah, the grants, blah blah blah, and then that was the only other country I've ever heard of, and I just think that's so amazing to have that sort of support. Where here in the States, they'd be like, laugh at you, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Money for what?
Not to take for granted in that sense as well, because like, yeah, it's just something that we know of because we live here and we're fortunate enough to get that. But yeah, it really is just a sick thing that New Zealand does, eh?
Yeah, it's like a staple. It's like a staple in like your industry career here, where you're like, okay, and then I'll apply for funding at this stage. So we're just so used to it. But yeah, obviously, yeah, like Pierre says, the grant should not be taken for granted,
The grant shall not be taken for granted.
Well, you obviously are both musical. Do you come from a musical household? Are your parents musicians at all?
Yeah, our parents are both artists in different rights. Our dad was a dancer and our mum was an actress. So there was just like obviously like a creative push to begin with. And dad couldn't touch a musical instrument if it was right in front of him. But mum's dad was like actually like a composer and like a conductor in the like university orchestra.
Oh wow.
There's that musical bone that runs through the body, I suppose. But even outside of music, it's just like very, very artsy family, you might call it. Yeah.
Sure. Well, what about instruments? Did your parents push, or not push you, but I guess did they say put you in piano lessons or guitar lessons, anything like that as a kid?
Called it, bro. They pushed us into piano lessons, exactly. And I think neither of us really took to them, but like, you know, it was like, I don't know, that pretty cliched thing of like, do your 15 minutes of piano practice and be like, oh, this sucks. Then I think eventually, like, you know, getting into intermediate school for me, which I believe is middle school for you over there, kind of stumbled on the guitar and started actually like, you know, getting interested in that for myself. And then just like eventually like defining myself as one of those like rock dudes, you know, just like being like, yeah, like Pantera and Trivium, and, you know, just like a full rock dude who just like embraced that.
Wow. Yeah, quite heavier than what you're doing now.
Yeah. Or you got to start at the shredders, and then you realize that it's not all about playing things fast, which is a lesson that I feel like a lot of people have.
Yeah. Well, Pierre, you still play keys in the band?
I used to.
I know you used to play.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kept playing the piano, obviously. To some capacity. I mean,
like we all did it for like at least like 3 years total during our, or maybe Charles did it. We have an older brother as well who's probably the best at piano out of all of us. But we all were like good enough at it to the point where I was like okay at playing keys in our band. I'm definitely a stronger bass player, I think, but I also went to jazz school or jazz university or jazz college. So I'm done the US translation. College. Is that what it is? Yeah. I went to jazz university, and I played bass for that degree, but it was compulsory to do piano for the first year as well. So I sort of got a bit more knowledge, and that was like around the same time I started playing in the band, I think. Yeah. Well, that definitely helped out. Yeah.
Okay. Was the band going prior, Henry? Like, when did the band start?
The band started like probably like 7-8 years ago. And that was just like, I was in a bunch of different bands with my friends, and then kind of started writing a lot of stuff myself, and then I'd bring it to the band, and then it'd be like, oh no, maybe not that one. Oh no, maybe not that one. So I just kind of fell into like being like, well, I'm gonna try and make my own project. Then I enlisted our older brother to play drums, and then as soon as this guy was like old enough to sneak him into like the bar scene, we got him in as well. And then it just kind of like grew from there, or I should say shrunk from there, because we eventually like got really into production together, particularly, and then kind of ended up just like shaping it down to the two of us, just because like it was like kind of our everyday kind of thing.
Yeah, from what I was reading, it was like you guys were like a 3-piece and then a kind of a 4-piece, and obviously now just the two of you. So were you always jamming together, the three of you, or was that something that you did aside from the band originally?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Like in the house or whatever.
And like another like cliche of just like rocking out to Red Hot Chili Peppers in the parents' like living room kind of thing.
In this room, in this
very room, bro. We're like hunkering down at our parents' house at the moment because we're in New Zealand for another week. And we're just right back to where it all started, bro. Yeah,
that's amazing. So that you jam out with the three of you in that room that you're currently hanging out in. That's crazy.
That's right.
Yeah. Or tried to.
Yeah,
tried to. All right.
It's a lot of like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Muse and that kind of stuff.
Earlier on, because you were you talked about Trivium and Pantera, and was the earlier sound of the band heavier, or that band that you were in before this one, where you said you were writing songs and then they weren't feeling it or whatever?
It was definitely never like in the metal genre, but there are a few like hard rock bangers like in the very early days.
Yeah, but nothing quite as heavy as like Pantera.
There was like a real Kings of Leon sounding song we had.
Yeah, but that
was maybe the heaviest.
That's about as heavy as we went, which is like that's quite a gap there from Kings of Leon.
Yeah, that's but depending on the album. Definitely heavier than what we're doing now.
Well, sure. Okay. So it started off. What were you up to then, Pierre, while they were kind of doing that earlier formation of the band? Were you said you were too young to get into the clubs and stuff? Is that what they said, or what you guys were saying?
I was like 15.
Okay.
Playing the double bass at school. And just growing up, yeah. And I was like, I don't know, Henry was in a lot of different bands, you know, so with school friends, as well as his own project and like cover bands and all that stuff. And a lot of those bands would rehearse down here in this room. And I would just like quietly sit at the top of the stairs and just listen and just be like, fuck, that's real cool. Music like that. Yeah, so I was just watching and learning, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, did you end up going to school, Henry, for music, or no?
Yeah, man, I went to like more of it was called pop school, but it's more of like a songwriting focused university level thing. So it makes sense. It like transfers quite like clearly to our strengths now, because Pierre's like very talented instrumentally, and my like focus is more like songwriting and yeah, top lining and things like that. So it's quite I don't know, if nothing else, satisfying that our like kind of university degrees like really nurtured those two sides that like we work together with. So yeah, that's where I went to Auckland University to do like, yeah, songwriting basically.
Very cool. I'm sure working as, you know, being brothers, that probably even helps a bit when you're working together, right? I'm sure you can be a lot more honest with one another.
Yeah, it is the case, bro. It is a little bit of a hack. It's a nice shortcut to have, because we've been in plenty of scenarios where like, you know, we're polite boys at heart, bro. I don't want to break my friend's heart and be like,
right,
I fucking hate that, but I can say that to this guy, so it's very helpful, you know.
Yeah, unconditional love, right?
Yeah. Along a lot.
That's funny. So when the band first started off, and like, tell me about kind of the earlier moments, or like earlier kind of victories that you realized that maybe you're like, okay, like this is definitely something we should pursue, or was there moments that kind of kept you going?
Yeah, I mean, we played a lot when we started playing live in Auckland. We would play like a gig, like a couple times a weekend, most weekends for like a year or whatever. So that was like that was before we had released any music, and it was just I guess a good like grassroots way of like getting people to come to the show, and word of mouth, just seeing us live or whatever. So that, yeah, that really helps, I guess, just make it become like more tangible as like a possible thing to do, and validate like, oh, maybe this is a thing that's more than just a hobby.
I think one of the checkpoints also was like what we were just talking about earlier, and like being of the like status that we could apply for funding, because like I said, that is like a big checkpoint in New Zealand, being like,
yeah,
something to work towards. Because yeah, like I say, the culture and population makes it very hard to like, I don't know, like build numbers like you could if you're like touring city to city over there. Like you could probably do that, but like here it's like there's like 2 cities that you could do, and then like you've done those, and then that's it.
Right.
So,
you have to kind of prove yourself, right? I mean, I'm sure so many people probably apply for the funding, and only a percentage will actually receive it. So like, do you have to go and say like, we're doing these things, or I'm sure you have to present some sort of plan?
Yeah, for sure. There is like a big form of things that you have to tick out, or like you know, like show evidence for, and I'm sure that's changed over the years, because mine was like, when I applied for it, it was more just like, how many followers do you have in this area, and like, where have you been playing in this area, and how many cap rooms play in this area, and things like that. And then just like a big, like, I suppose like essay submission of like what your plan is, and like what you intend to like push into and stuff. So yeah, I think getting that back was probably one of the like first like tangible wins, to be like, oh my gosh, it's worth the New Zealand government investing in. Like,
yeah, right. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
Did you have music recorded before that, or just so like, did you have to submit any sort of songs to them, or was it?
Yeah, so it is on the basis of a song. You have to submit the song. so that you could either use the grant to like, here's the demo, I need to use the grant to like take it to a producer, or it generally tended to be like, here's the song finished in full, can we have a grant for a music video, which was our first one. I don't know how the grant system works now, because I imagine the music video is not quite as prevalent as it was back then. Yeah, like getting that little chunk of money back and like being able to invest it in our very own music video was like definitely a checkpoint. I will say we like entirely ruined the music video and didn't use it, and then had to use our own money to make another one. But the idea was great.
Do they expect like you to show a product? Like, do you have to
the money? So like we had to give a product. So we're like, well, we ruined that one. We better, we had to like.
Well, I want to hear that story. What was the song? What song was it for?
It was our very first single. It was called Weekend. It was back in 2016 or 17.
Okay.
It was our first experience doing everything, and we got a pitch for the music video, and it was a really cool pitch. And like it was about some alien who comes to Earth, and basically has like a love affair with a lady, because the song was like, I guess you could stay for the weekend. And like on paper it was like a really cool thing, and the people were great and we worked well with them, but the final product, for whatever reason, just I don't know, just didn't quite hit the way it could have. I think our management at the time was like, sorry, you just can't release this. I don't know. I think it was a bit too quirky and a bit too unsafe for our first. I don't know. I still don't really know. Like, I still think it's a cool video. I just think it was a bit of a random debut, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was a misguiding debut, and we were so deep in it by that time that I think I remember getting it back and being like, I have no idea what this is, like, if this is great, if this is terrible, just because we'd already worked so hard on it that you just like, I tend to like, and Pierre's similar, like get so focused on something that it's just like, I have no perspective, like, like, what is this? And so we just like had some guidance being like, this, do you mean to come off this way? Because it kind of comes off like this. And I was like, not at all. That's not what we want at all.
So did you reshoot the video completely in like a totally different concept?
Just an entirely different concept, like a lot safer, a lot smaller a concept. And I think the key difference was also it was with someone who had experience in music videos. Okay. The other one was like more experience in like TV and like
feature films.
Yeah. And so it kind of came off like a little too filmic, and it was like, what is this? Are they playing instruments for some reason?
Okay.
Learning curve, bro. A big learning curve.
Yeah.
Sure. And what year do you guys kind of not dwindle down, but like solidify as the two of you?
I think it was around about the end of 2019.
Okay. So you have like that mixtape of, I don't know, about 10 songs or something. Was that all as a 3-4 piece band, or was that just the two of you at that time?
We were a 4-piece live, but at that point it was still or it had already become a sort of scenario where it was the two of us writing and producing all of it, sometimes with other writers and producers outside of the band. But I guess there was never really a point where, when we were a 4-piece, all 4 of us were involved in the recording element. But they were still very like vital pieces to the live act. So it was still, appeared as a 4-piece back then. But I think we just decided by the like mid to end of 2019 that it felt right to scale it back to the two of us, because that's where like the heart of the band is. And although, like I said, like they didn't contribute so much to the recording styles, there was still, you still have to balance like opinions and band practices about where to go with things for the live show. And I think they also, this was like our lives, we're trying to make our lives. But our bassist at the time was a very busy session musician who worked in like 10 other bands in Auckland, and our drummer was our older brother, and he had like a big career in pharmaceuticals and stuff, so
Uh-huh.
they had like other outside commitments. So
Yeah, I mean, that happens, right? I mean, like it's hard to keep a band of 4 or 5 people that all have the same vision, are all willing to just go all in, right? I mean, usually I'll talk to people where they don't know each other, but they grew up in the same area because they were all in bands, and then it's like the 2 or 3 people from each band that actually, that's all they care about, is just making this like a career path, and then they form a band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a like common story, and it makes sense because I don't know, it's often like you're developing a band over like these very pivotal years, and then like the people fall off because they're like, oh no, I like doing this in your parents' garage. I don't want to dedicate my whole life to this.
Right.
Not for everyone, you know.
Sure. So so then tell me, like 2020 hits and the world shuts down, and you guys had you put out the mixtape, and how do you move forward from them? Are you like, like how are we going to continue on with this? Like where was your head at when that all happened?
Yeah, it was so 2019 was when we scaled down. And then we released a song called Medicine, which like kind of has been our best played song so far. So I think that gave us like a bit of momentum and like, I don't know, vitality and like assurance that we could like do this as a 2-piece, because that was our first kind of foray into like the idea of us being a duo.
Yeah, so that one does really well. I mean, does that happen pretty quickly? Do you see like the numbers kind of going and you're like, oh wow, like this is nuts?
No, it was just really steady, like super steady, which was nicer because, you know, like you always get those little bumps from like Spotify playlisting and whatnot.
Sure.
But the fact that this one was steady was like, oh, cool. It's actually like resonating like lastingly.
Right.
But yeah, we were actually living in different countries at the time the pandemic hit, just because my girlfriend was working in Australia at the time. And then like when it kind of hit March, like we were supposed to be playing a show, and then the Prime Minister suddenly announces like, if you don't get home tomorrow, then you're gonna have to be in isolation for 2 weeks. And so I like bought a ticket like on the spot because it would mean we couldn't play our show. So I like rushed back to New Zealand. Of course, like it got worse from there, the pandemic. So like we definitely didn't play the show. But that at least meant that like we got to like
be together.
Yeah, be together. Like again, like we are like for this little couple weeks stint, we're like literally back at our parents' house, just like hunkering down, being like waiting to go to the next place. But that the pandemic like actually brought us together, and then we just like locked in and wrote a bunch more stuff, some of which is like the songs that like led us to our EP that we just released right now.
Okay, so some of these were written during that time period?
Not these, but like I think the song, one of the songs was like very much like this is going in this direction, let's follow this.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's like chronologically, I think that time period of us being stuck in isolation was what led us to write this EP, if that makes sense.
No, totally.
Yeah,
and then
I think the biggest silver lining about the pandemic for me was just like the validation of like producing things ourselves, because we had previously done a bit of production ourselves but never like felt good enough to actually do the final product. So would hire other producers to like work with us and writers, but because during the pandemic we were literally stuck at home, we had to do it all ourselves. And that was also right after we dropped, shortly after we dropped Medicine. Like 2 or 3 months before we did, which was our first song that we did entirely ourselves production. So it's kind of just like, it was good timing to figure out that like, okay, cool, let's produce ourselves now.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, talk about being validated, right? As a duo and with your own production to come out and have that be your best stream song.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
And you need validation, it's fucking hard as being an artist. It's so hard. So like,
you do, right? I mean, because then it's like, if no one's responding, then you're like, what
am I doing?
Yeah, should I continue doing this? Or like,
So
Am
like
I
those,
that like, yeah, naive that I think this is something that's gonna work out? Or I
yeah.
could see that being
So
very hard.
such a mind game. And when you get those little pockets of like, validation, it's like you just need to feed off that high, and like that's when I'm the most creative, is when I'm like, cool. Like, yeah, this is a thing. And then I just, you gotta bank on that,
Just like
Sure.
validation for me, it's just like, okay, cool, I'm not crazy, because I've just done this and like had like this idea for so long. I'm like, sometimes someone's gonna get it, and then when like little pockets of people do, you're like, okay, cool, I'm not going fucking insane,
Right. You're like, am I delusional? Like, am I the only one that thinks this is good? But then obviously, and then when you do medicine and it's like, okay, this is working, are you worried about, okay, is the next thing gonna work? Is the next thing gonna hit? Or not even thinking that way?
Not for sure. There's like a part of that, but I think like Pierre said, you gotta like we fed off the validation a little bit, and yeah, it was so like liberating to be like, cool, this was done like entirely in-house. So we have the budget for it, because the budget is our time.
Sure.
So I think it helped for sure.
Well, with this new EP that you just put out, were those songs all done just the two of you?
Yeah, all but two, which we co-produced with a friend of ours called Simon Gooding. And actually, yeah, we wrote those are the two ones. I don't know, we've worked with a lot of producers and writers in our time, but for whatever reason, we have quite a good success rate with Simon Gooding. So shout out to him. And yeah, both the songs Moon Man and I Should Be Home were like, we co-wrote that with him and co-produced with him.
Okay.
And he's also the guy that mixes all our stuff. So he's definitely like he's a vital part to the piece,
Sure.
Well, yeah,
tell me,
just
the two of you.
Me and Henry.
Wow. And then how do you guys get the the attention of Atlantic?
A guy called Peter Kim snuck into our DMs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it's probably just over a year ago now. He just like DM'd us being like, hey, I really like you guys' music. And we were just like, hey, who are you? But I mean that just in the sense of like Instagram's like, a crazy social place, and you get DMs from people.
Right.
Say, hey, I'm this, like I'm an A&R from this label, but you're just like, are you? So
Sure.
then we had a call with him, and he was real friendly and said he liked our stuff. And then I can't remember what happened exactly. I think
we just got on a call with him, and then like
Mhm.
we're like, cool, this guy seems real. We told our manager about it, and she was like, okay, cool. Also very suspicious. Cool, maybe I'll email him, and then it'll probably all blow over. And then she's like, wow, he seems like a real person.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just like got on calls, and then talked to the CEO Craig Kelman at Atlantic, and then was just like, oh, this is quite real now, I suppose. So yeah, went back and forth from there, and got a contract going, and sat on that for like 7 months of back and forth with lawyers and stuff, and then finally got it across the line. But it all started with shout out Peter Kim at A&R at Atlantic, bro.
PK.
Yeah, isn't that wild to think like just all via Instagram?
Yeah.
I mean, what if you wouldn't have checked the D, you wouldn't have got the message, or it's just so wild to think that at this day and age, it's like, oh, hey, via some social media platform.
Yeah.
Like I work at Atlantic and I want to sign your band. You're like, what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is very wild. And it is, it's a funny story to tell, like, I don't know, someone of a different generation, or like our parents, for instance, and be like, yeah, some guy hit us up on Instagram, and they're just like, what do you mean that's how you signed your contract, or like started a new job per se,
Sure.
Some guy on Instagram was like, I heard your thing on Spotify,
Mm-hmm. Was there a certain particular song that he reached out to you about? Or just in general, the
think
of the band?
That's how it would end.
Yeah.
I think he just heard it via his Discover Weekly on Spotify. Yeah.
That's
Although
killer.
he's a Tidal user as well. He's the only guy I know that uses Tidal. But that's that's because like Yeah, and New Zealand, it's all Spotify. But
Okay.
apparently you get better, higher quality on Tidal. Anyway, I got sidetracked. Yeah, he how it would end on because he uses Spotify as well. Don't know what. Cool.
That's amazing though. And then you've just recently put out the EP. What about supporting the EP? Have you had a chance to, even come to the States to do any touring, or are you playing New Zealand anytime soon? Like, what's your guys' plan?
Yeah, so we were in the States earlier this year just to meet Atlantic and meet the team over there in New York and in LA. So spent a couple months over there. But we're planning to go back there in maybe November or maybe end of October. Hopefully do some showcase shows there, which will be amazing to play over there for the first time. But we just did play some shows in New Zealand, which was super nice because we haven't played in 18 months, which is like absolutely criminal for us, like just pandemic wise, we just had everything canceled. And we've done a bunch of that travel that I just mentioned this year. So it was so nice to play a show to our own audiences and like remember, what it's all about, bro. It's all about rocking out to Pantera,
Have you played many shows, just the two of you? Or was there not a whole lot of time in between the pandemic happening?
Well, since we've scaled to the two of us, there's still a session musician that plays drums, but
okay.
We've done that setup for since like when did we start playing with James? Because New Zealand was weird because we locked down at the start of 2020-ish, like March, like the whole world did. But then we had this break of the pandemic from like August of 2020 till through till the next year, I'm pretty sure, through like early 2021. So yeah, it was strange. So we could play, it was great. But yeah, we could play shows in 2020.
Yeah, I remember hearing that actually. Like I interviewed a few people that were in bands in Australia and they're all jealous. Like they're playing festivals, like, in New Zealand.
Yeah. And people like around the world were like, "You idiots, you don't even know there's a pandemic down there."
Yeah.
That's because our fucking government did some wild shit and like helped us out and like kept us COVID free for that little period, which is like the only place in the world. It was crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you guys did a pretty good job of that. I remember seeing, but there was like no ins and outs, right? It was pretty locked down on that side.
Yeah, it was very locked down. Yeah, it's very, very strange times. Interesting.
Yeah,
times.
and then because on the opposite end of the spectrum, there was like a time where the whole world was sort of, on the back to normal, or at least on their way, very much on their way, and we were having like our most intense lockdown was actually like. Was it the beginning of this? End of 2021. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which I think I think that's when the rest of the world was like slowly sort of
opening back up or whatever. Yeah.
Was getting vaccinated and stuff like that. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, that's awesome. You guys get to come back this way and hopefully, do a bunch of shows here in the United States. I'd love to see you. I'm in Nashville now. I'm originally from just south of LA. So I'm kind of in the middle of the country, south of the country, but yeah, that's awesome. I love your sound. I love the record. It's amazing, and I appreciate I appreciate the time today.
Oh no, I appreciate you, bro. Thanks for having us, dude.
Yeah, I do have one more quick question before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I definitely do, bro. I definitely do.
Just keep going.
Yeah,
just keep going. Don't give up.
I think the best.
That's so cliche.
The best bit of advice I got was just like that. It's just like a long game. It's like endurance, and just like we were talking about with like the core members of a band, being the people who keep going. Like if that's you, then that's you, and then you just know that you'll have your time if you just keep going. It's like such an endurance game. So keep going. Yeah. It's an endurance game.
If you love it enough, you'll keep doing it.
Bringing it backward.